Good morning. It's May 30th in sunny Mexico, very hot and sticky here on a Sunday morning. Today's guest his name is Jon Parker. He's apparently a man of many talents. He's a policeman, writer. He does graphic design of book covers, which might be of interest to the service, might be of interest to some of our listeners and viewers. He also blogs and is a father and husband. He lives in the USA, and he's written 3 books, 2 of which are fictional, one of which I've read. It's called Mouth Breather, which we'll come to shortly. Another one is a series he started called Sacred. And he's also written a non-fiction book called Toxic, which is about masculinity in the modern world, which I'm looking forward to reading. He seems, from what I've seen so far of his work, to come from a rather conservative, traditional, old-fashioned background, which is where I come from. So I'm not being critical of the way some people would use those words. It's very, very much in line with the way I see things at the moment. And his novel, Mouth Breather, there's a clear intent in the book to guide young men on the right path before they get led astray by the horrible things that are going on in the world today. Jon Parker, welcome to the show. The floor is yours now. Could you please give us an introduction briefly of who you are, well, not briefly, as long as you like, take as long as you like, where you're from and your background and so on.
Sure. Excuse me. Oh, I'm Jon. I'm from Arkansas originally and traveled around and came back home. I am a policeman, like you said. I'm a father of 4 children, and I don't know what to say. They're amazing. And then I married my wife when we were both 17. We were the couple that had to get permission from our parents to get married. And we're still married, love at first sight or something. But yeah, I mean, that's the short and sweet of it. I love writing and I love doing graphic design, and I'm just doing what I want to do.
What particular aspect of police work do you do? Are you on the streets or highway patrols or?
No, I just left a few months ago from the streets, and I went and I started working in the schools not too long ago. So I'm back on the street for the summer, and then I think I'll be doing the school again next school year, at least for the foreseeable future.
That's quite convenient, really, because your book, Mouth Breather, at least, is set largely in school. Yeah. I guess it's giving you a great insight and will help you develop that theme.
I do find that, so I pulled from, my experience being in school, and I find that it hasn't changed that much. The characters in the book are still very true to how kids are, in my experience at least.
Well, I guess there's something timeless about childhood. Hopefully it will last. We'll see. The way things are going, nothing's taken for granted. We'll come to the book shortly. Tell us, you're clearly coming from how should I put it, conservative Christian, middle America, all terms of insult these days, but not in our world. Were you red-pilled along the way? Were you born red-pilled, or was it some kind of incident during your course of your...
So, that's kind of a tough one. I think somebody wants to say hi. Growing up, my parents were drug addicts and alcoholics.
Is that right?
Yeah, and they would use, I mean, I don't even remember the number of different houses we lived in because, they used rent money for that rather than paying for the houses. There was a lot of violence and just anger. Not to get too deep into that, but I think that Christianity was at least, the concept of having a savior and that solid rock, that foundation that would always be there was kind of my was like my anchor, just like they say, was my anchor amongst that tumultuous childhood, because it was pretty crazy. And I think that's why I started believing in God. I don't know. I've always been very untrusting of pretty much everybody and everything, except for that one belief in God. So I think maybe this is just a side effect of that, of just being, not trusting what people say about the way things are.
Yeah.
And then there was a moment in my early 20s. Well, not that early 20s, because I'm 30 now. So this was the beginning of 2017 when this happened. I was very much struggling in my faith and in who I was supposed to be as a man. And then I just decided that I was just going to do whatever I wanted to do, and because I had to answer these questions, I was going to study what I wanted to study and figure out the answers to all these questions I had on my own terms. And I figured I had never done that, and I lived like with a lot of anxiety because I always thought God would be mad at me, and that was just the kind of thing. I was raised not to ask questions. Like, you get beat if you ask too many questions.
Right.
So I didn't. And then one day I was like, I'll just running through all these memories in my head. I'm sorry. I guess I delved a little bit into a little bit of nihilism, and I just stopped caring about everything that I thought I was supposed to care about. And that was a really big moment. Kind of shedding of everything I thought I was, to then build back up who I was supposed to be, if that makes sense.
No, it's probably the only real way to change is to deconstruct first. At what age were you? We're talking teens, I guess.
In that moment, I was 27.
Oh, right. So quite recently.
Yeah, but I feel like, I don't know. I've always been weird, so I don't know if that was the red pill moment or if it was just the moment that I decided to, like, I'm not going to take anything at face value. I guess that's kind of the same thing, but
yeah.
So
that's a theme that comes back in the book. The lead character, well, it sounds like you used your childhood experiences quite a bit. In Mouth Breather, the protagonist, for those who haven't read it, is called James. He's the son of a single mom. She's a nurse, and he goes to an Angel Grove High school in Texas, where he's in the 6th grade. He's called Mouth Breather because of the unfortunate tendency of his jaw to hang open when he's thinking, which is a lot of the time. And in it, you describe him as saying, I am different. That's why I only have one real friend. No one wants to be around the weird ones, and I'm a weird one, I guess. I'm the outcast. But that's okay, I suppose. So that does sound biographical to an extent. Also, he's looking for a hero or father figure or a role model, which turns out to be his Uncle Rob, who's been declared missing in the Gulf. So I can see, we'll come back to this in a minute because I want to cover a bit more of your personal circumstances, but I can see then that there's echoes in the book very much of your own background. Was it simultaneous with this sort of change of track, deconstruction, and realizing who you wanted to be and how you were going to get there, that you decided you wanted to write the book as well? Did the two come together by the sound of it?
Yeah. So I actually did start writing that in 2017. And I had always wanted to be a writer. When I was a kid, I was writing all the time, poems and songs, and I was trying to write, like I wrote a lot of short stories. I never could manage a full book at that time, but my hand started hurting trying to write on pen and paper. I didn't want to do it. But in 2017, after that I think that kind of, like you said, deconstruction shed away everything, everything. And that gave me I was like, I've got to start putting my story out there. Not my story, but the stories that I have in my mind, I've got to start doing it. And it was part of I'm just going to do what I want to do. And I did, and it's worked out well so far. But yeah, it was in line with that.
what guidance did you take before putting pen to paper? Were there any spiritual mentors from your private life or other writers that you'd admired, whether fictional or non-fiction? Because your story covers both fiction and non-fiction in many ways. It's kind of a guide. Even the novel is a kind of guide for life. So, inspirations from any particular directions?
Not in particular. I actually don't even read those the genre of book that is. I don't read those. I never have. I think I read a couple when I was a teenager in that genre, but typically I'm like a sci-fi fantasy reader, if I'm going to read fiction. So I can't point to any specific influence. There's definitely influences from my friends in the Fraternity of Excellence. There are some other authors in there, and they're just what's that?
Can you explain the Fraternity of Excellence, please?
Yeah, the Fraternity of Excellence is a group of men. It actually early 2017. A man named Zach Small, he was going by Hunter at the time, started a challenge called 31 Days to Masculinity. It was Men in March, and that evolved into him partnering with Craig James to create the Fraternity of Excellence, which is an online men's group that is devoted to self-improvement in every area, from fatherhood to finance to fitness, the 3 F's, I guess, but everything. Like, they talk about all kinds of different stuff and the accountability, and they're just always, we're all, like, always helping each other, if that makes sense. So
how many members in the group?
There's well over 100 right now. I don't know the exact number, but
are they all writers and sort of influencers, or can anybody?
Yeah, you just have to be a man. Yep.
With the will to improve, yes.
With the will to improve, yeah. But no, there's every type of person. There's people who work, a 9 to 5, and that's when they love their job and they want to stay there. There's people who hate it and they're trying to become influencers. There's very popular influencers in there, in every field that you can think of. There's fitness guys, there's writers, there's graphic designers like me, there's business guys, there's everything. And that's one of the major benefits of it, is there's a wealth of experience there, and they're all it's a brotherhood. They're all super helpful and super willing to do whatever they can to help each other. And it's a lot of those guys, especially from the early days of the group, their influence helped me to get through that book. Actually, if it wasn't for the fraternity, I don't even know if I would have finished Mouth Breather. Their encouragement pushed me to do it. Yeah.
Yes, it's not an easy thing first time out writing a book, and especially if you're not particularly, your life is completely at odds with the sort of academic, intellectual lifestyle, I imagine, as far as it can get almost. How did you find the writing process? Was it a struggle, or you managed to get the word? Because you used, actually, in your website, which is a very well presented and well executed website, you talk about a writing style or book by Adam Lane Smith, who's another writer I'd like to maybe get on the show. Did he help you with the process from at the start, or I know you recommend him now, or did you come to him later, or what can you tell us about your experience with putting pen to paper at the beginning?
So Adam's course, Write Like a Beast, is amazing. It's easy to implement, it's very understandable, and it's very practical. And he built it, through trial and error, coming up with that by himself. When I wrote Mouth Breather, I didn't know the first thing about writing a book, so I didn't know anything about outlining or anything. So I kind of just, they call it pantsing. I pantsed my way through it. I had no outline and no plot, nothing written down. So I just wrote what came to me in the moment as I was writing it. And that, for me at least, I know some authors that's just how they write naturally, but I enjoy that because it feels like it's raw creativity, raw potential coming out. But it's also kind of chaotic at times.
Yes.
And it I spent a lot of time sitting at the computer with my hands on the keyboard, not typing, just trying to think like, okay, what's happening now, you know? And his course, Write Like a Beast, kind of gives a very simple way to outline and to increase productivity, and it did for me. I've increased my productivity a lot. Actually, Sacred Part 2, called Savage, would be done now, but I stopped writing it in favor of learning copywriting and stuff and more about graphic design. And I'm going to return to it soon because I really, really want to get it out there because it's awesome. But anyway, that course is amazing. I got to say that.
Very good. Mouth Breather was the first of your books, I take it.
Yeah.
It's a coming of age story, I think it's fair to say, of this young kid in Texas high school. He, from a background similar to your own by the sound of it, although his mother's very sympathetic, isn't she? She's not a bad character. But he does go through quite a tumultuous, and during the course of the story, he goes through quite a few tumultuous incidents. We first meet him, he's being beaten up, basically, by his arch enemy, Braden. And then that's probably the easiest he gets treated, the best he gets treated throughout the book. He goes through some really traumatic experiences. I've got a couple of excerpts I'd like to read to give people an idea of what the text. After he's been beaten up, he's an Indian doctor's looking after him, a nice female character. He obviously clings on to the role models in the book. She's explaining to him the good and evil. She's saying, I'm trying to say that being a good person, someone that you can be proud of, isn't a one-time choice. You will have to make a difficult decision many, many more times in your life. It is often simple to do the right thing when the stakes are small. It is much more troublesome to do what is honorable when you have something to lose. This time you did that. Next time you may not. It is a choice that you will have to make again and again. A person's goodness or lack thereof is always in flux. Just remember that the choice will come, and it will likely be even more difficult to make the right decision when it does. Funnily, I have a very similar line in my own novel. So we're very much in tune there. You don't bring up Christianity as such in the novel, I would point out. It's not a God Squad type preaching pamphlet. It's left in the background. But there is this sort of strong masculine Christian. There used to be a sort of whole movement. The whole Christian movement used to be based on this kind of strength and masculinity, not the stuff that it's doing now. And you're just reviving, I think, in some sense, the old-fashioned version of Christianity. In another text, the issue of good and evil being a moral choice is also raised again. I had become, because he saves several lives in the course of the book, I had become both a hero and villain, it seemed. Actually, it was more like the pre-existing hero and villain inside of me were both made obvious. Great line. Everyone was a little of each, right? That's the way it had always seemed to me. Given the right circumstances or pushed to the most extreme limits, I knew that anyone was capable of pretty much anything. Very good writing. Perfect for the story. It's very, the text, as you can tell, is quite, is aimed at, I think who's your target audience in this? I'm guessing it's teens, males, late teens.
Yeah, I was thinking anywhere from 15 to 80.
Yeah.
You know, because I feel like, I mean, it was definitely geared toward a male audience, but my wife read it and absolutely loved it. So it could be anybody really, but it was designed to help. The ones I wanted it to help were the young men. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they are, in my mind, they're the single group of people that are most overlooked in the world, in our Western societies today, unless they're a privileged minority, in which case they get plenty of attention and praise and help and all sorts. But
Yeah.
the broad mass of them are overlooked, and it's showing now. It's in terrible school results, terrible drug addictions, terrible performances, and all kinds of tables. So they are the ones that need the help at the moment. During the course of the book, you touch on other issues: gun control, single parenthood, bullying, role models, and how they all interact. There's a quote here: "I couldn't shake the feeling that none of this was it's on the gun control issue, because guns get used in the book. That none of this was an issue of weaponry, though. It was a bigger problem. This was a societal and cultural thing. Somewhere along the line, we'd done something wrong. Maybe this problem with Dylan and Erica, who are kind of like the Columbine massacre individuals, could simply be blamed on poor parenting. Could it be that these two kids just snapped after being forced to endure too much hardship at the hands of their so-called guardians? What if this was instigated by Dylan and Erica followed along out of blind devotion? After all, he was the one who obtained the weapons. Maybe it was the emasculation of America that was the cause. History had borne out the truth that humans are tribal by nature, and that men, in particular, have a penchant for war. Men are driven to seek out risk and gain status amongst their peers in an aggressive way. What happens to men when they are forced by societal expectations to deny their primal natures and remain docile? Could there still be a place for the masculine man in the modern world? Were they all doomed to give up their lives in service to the nations in war, like Rob might have, or in service to their own darkest impulses by acting as Dylan had? Again, superb writing, and it's a great message that can't be spread far enough as far as I'm concerned. Where does sacred fall into line with regard to mouth breather? Is there any continuation, or it's completely different?
So, what's that? Go ahead.
Sacred, it's completely separate to mouth breather.
Yeah, it's its own completely different, like a mildly futuristic sci-fi zombie thing.
Okay.
Yeah, it's I call it Christian sci-fi. Ever since it got a negative review on Amazon and the person said I should have been warned that this was cry-fi, not sci-fi, so now I just call it cry-fi.
Okay. You've written one of it's going to be a trilogy, is it? Or
Yeah, the first is Sacred, and part 2 is Savage, which I'm about halfway done with, and part 3 is called Saints.
can you give us a rough idea of the first one, what the storyline and the basic characters?
Yeah, absolutely. It may seem a little outlandish, but trust me, it's pretty awesome. It is not true. It's fantasy, so it's like a little bit into the future of modern Earth. There's a doctor. He's an atheist, and his desire he has a desire to give humanity immortality without God, to show them that they don't need God to live forever and to be gods themselves. So, and there's a very heavy emphasis on the parallels between that and the Tower of Babel story, where God did not want them to do this. They were reaching for something that wasn't theirs at that time, so he stopped it. And that's kind of what I'm going for here. It was doomed to fail from the beginning, and this anti-weakness, anti-sickness serum that he created began the zombie outbreak. And as a result of billions of people dying off so rapidly, the junk DNA in a select few people, the survivors, most of them, began to activate and evolve a little bit, and they developed these powers. And they're all like psychic powers in nature. Like they can use telekinesis and they can fly, and one of them can control storms and stuff. And so maybe it's not all psychic, but I don't know, I was just getting a little creative with it. But and the ultimate enemy, there's a progression. The enemy in the first one is other psychics, and then the enemy in the second one is well, I don't want to give away too much, but okay. That there are enemies, and they are supernatural enemies. The prologue for those that read it. The prologue in each book is the story of that scientist who started this. And then all the chapters are the story of a great many different characters. I think the first book has like 6 or 7 POV characters,
Okay.
which
Yeah,
was really fun.
Sounds like there are parallels with the modern world. I mean, you've got people like Fauci literally doing everything you said in the first half of your book. Was it written during the lockdown, or this was just coincidental?
This was written 2019 into 2020, so it was, yeah.
Some of the material was on the news. As you switched it on, you just had to take notes. I see. And the other ones, you've got 2 more books in line, you say, in that trilogy.
Yeah.
And are there any other projects you've got running parallel or thinking about longer term?
Yes. I'm writing. Okay, so my brother-in-law and I are writing. We've come up with this whole world together, and we're going to be writing some books together. And I'm thinking about actually making. I have started making. There's a post on my website. It's called "Meet Alira Luna Lamar: The Chronicles of Eldor," and that's this massive 9 to 12 book series in sets of 3 that cover the history of this world called Eldor and its sister planet called Voltamar, and it's a high epic fantasy. There's dragons and magic and elves, and humans are enslaved and they got to free themselves because they lost the war, and it's going to be pretty crazy. And there's something that's really fun about that one is I was trying to think about what if there is life on other planets, right? And whether there is or not is neither here nor there. But if there were, it could be anything. It could be dragons, and I wanted to know what it would look like if, the faith that we have. If God is real, then He's the God of the universe, not just of Earth. And so I created a faith, a cosmic faith that makes
we
God.
Lost you a moment. Let's see if it comes back.
Can you hear me?
Can you just repeat that? We lost you for about the last 10 seconds. Can you just repeat the last?
Okay, sure. So you can hear me now?
Yeah, we're back together. I don't know what
Okay, cool. So anyway, I wanted to make a cosmic faith in the one God of everything. So there's that in the background of this whole series is this faith in the one true God who is God. And it's kind of fun to write that, there's elves have their own religion and there's different minor false religions on this planet, but I'm going to kind of developing and learning about the one true faith and the one true God in their journey. In this first book it's called the first trilogy is the Dragon Arc trilogy, in their journey to free humanity and all that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of parallels between. God, my mind's spinning because we've spent the last 2 years building this world. And I say there's an article about one of the characters on because we're starting to make it a little bit public a little bit at a time, because it's all built on this website called World Anvil. If you've never heard of that, it's the best world building website platform ever. But there's everything is there, and that's after I finish this trilogy. That's going to be my main focus.
Okay. And your book, Toxic, we cover mainly here fiction. Well, I specialize in fiction for the channel, but I'm happy to delve now and then. I'd like to do more of the non-fiction. There's just so many of them, and I think that a lot of them would be covering the same territory. But what's Toxic about? Could you give us an idea, please?
Sure. Toxic is, look at I got it right there. That's what it looks like.
Is that one of the covers?
Yep, I made that.
Yeah, you do some great covers. Fantastic.
Thank you. Thanks, I appreciate that. Um, that's a passion I didn't know that I had at first, but it's a whole lot of fun. But anyway, Toxic it was the book that I needed to write to both explain my own journey about how I went from a boy to a man much later than I should have. I was married and I had a son at 18, and I was a child. I was an immature child. And doing that while also kind of there's exposition on the plight of modern man, as I call it in the book, and why we are where we are, and then how I think we can fix it. And after every chapter, so there's chapter 1, and then there's a section called the work, where it's what men can do, like today, right now. First step you can take if you're starting from ground zero to start getting control over your life and reclaiming your masculinity, your masculine nature that I feel that culture has told us is wrong for us to have. And then right after that is chapter 1.5, and it is a scene from somewhere in my life. It's a very like a 5-second snippet out of everything, but just to show that, like, hey, I came from this kind of crappy situation, and then now I made it at least this far, and this is not where I want to be. And when I wrote it, it's not the end. It's not like I'm not done by far, but I'm there. And for any man who feels like, he's struggling and he's being told that he can't follow that nature that is him, because he's told it's wrong to be masculine. I want him to know that that's bullshit. Excuse my language.
Yeah, it is utter bullshit. You're quite right. Who do you blame for this the fact that we perfectly normal human beings with perfectly normal ambitions and life expectancies from life? Who's doing who's calling it? Where does it come from? It's not natural. No other civilization in history has survived, had to endure this kind of nonsense.
So I don't want to sound like a conspiracy guy or anything, but I mean, I don't actually care if I do. So it all started around the same time that we were talking about earlier, in 2017, that I started to realize my father-in-law, a genius of a man, much smarter than I am. He is a joy to talk to, but he told me about this document called The Long March Through the Institutions. I think I got that name right. And it kind of details the plan of Marxism to dig its disgusting paws into the foundation of this nation and kind of just erode it from within. And that's where it started, I think. And I think they're exploiting every perceived injustice and capitalizing on it. And I don't know. I mean, I know we all know who they are. The people that. I mean, it's obvious. If you're a blatant communist, I'm going to guess that you probably are in line with that. That ideal. But I mean, I think that's what it is. I think that all the people, okay, let's not say all, many of the people who are claiming injustice today are not wrong. There is injustice, and there is, there's racism and sexism and all that stuff exists. But
there may be better ways to deal with them than the ones that are being practiced at the moment. I quite agree.
So causing, like, demonizing the thing that got our civilization to where it is right now, causing men to kill themselves because they feel so bad for who they are, is abhorrent, and that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
And it's disgusting.
Very good. So you have a sideline. We just saw one of your book covers. You design your own book covers, but you also have a service for other writers, which I think might be interesting, because people, even myself, we have no idea where to go when it comes to. We write the book, terrific, and when we finish the book, we've no idea what to put on the cover.
Oh yeah, so I know how to do that.
Yes, you do. I will put a link to your website at the end,
Okay.
and hopefully somebody watching now will, or several of them will be in touch, because it is. It's also nice to know there's someone you can trust, because frankly, I wouldn't trust most of the graphic designers with the cover of my book, because they may well be out to deliberately undermine sabotage it in some way. But
Yeah.
someone like you, we can trust you. Did you do a course in graphic designing, or it's just a hobby that you've become good at?
It was one of those, just like writing. I've just spent an uncountable amount of hours on this computer, learning it.
Yeah.
And which, I mean, I'm happy. It's just been a lot of fun, And I actually started doing book covers because I didn't have the money to pay for an expensive book cover for my own book.
Yeah.
And then my early book covers, I've actually redone. Mouth Breather has a new book cover, and Sacred has a new book cover. I've redone them as my skills have gotten better.
Right.
But that's why I started, and then now I'm making money from it. So I don't know. It's just cool. I think that's the best way to make money is you end up making money from something you love doing anyway. It's not really work because you're doing it anyway. So, but yeah, it's a lot of fun. Well, I just had a brain fart. I don't know what I was going to say.
Not to worry. Well, I think that brings it up. You are a man of many talents. There's no question about it. It's well done on the first few books, and I'm sure there's plenty. Well, you're still young. You've got plenty of time to write many more. I'm sure you will.
Yep. I have a goal of 100 books in my backlist before I die. We'll see if that happens.
Wow. And in the meantime, wish you well, and thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it very much.
I appreciate it, Richard. Thank you very much for having me.
All the best.